the one thing that I really want to discuss with you all today is how crowded it is out there right now in our world. Now, it's been crowded for a long time. Before we had networking, we had different college fairs, graduate fairs, cafeterias. We had all these different opportunities that were very crowded places, but there were still opportunities to create personal touches because we're making eye contact with folks. We're talking to people in cafeterias. We're making personal connections. Well, now it's still crowded, but it's even more crowded than ever before because now we're relying on emails, we're relying on snail mail, we're relying on text message campaigns, social media engagement. So we have to be really cognizant that and know that it's going to be more difficult than ever, and it's even more crowded on the internet than it'll ever be in an in-person event like a grad fair, like you see in some of these examples. Now, students can't differentiate, and that's one thing that I think we really need to dive into. And these are some stats that came from Ruffalo and Noah Levitz in the Law School Admissions Council as well, is that 95% of prospects conduct their search online. Now, these stats were also before the pandemic hit. So this might even be 98, 99% of prospects are conducting their search online, which means we know it's going to be crowded, but which differentiation is even more key because when you're in person, when you're at grad fairs, when you're at college fairs, when you're at a cafeteria, people can differentiate, but online it's a lot more difficult. Now, 85% are saying the school site is a major influence on the decision. This doesn't surprise me either. That's your home base. But what we do know about school sites is that they're rich informational resources. And we know about a 15 to 18-year-old and even markets that are adult learners, we as consumers on the internet have a very short attention span and want everything to be spoon-fed to us. And I use the analogy all the time with my prospects and my clients is that when you're in a room with your friends and maybe you're having a beer with your friends and someone poses a question, right? And we don't know the answer to it. It's human nature for us to say, hey, go Google it. Well, if we can't find the information within like 5 seconds, the internet's broken. So we have to understand that the school site's a major influence on our decision, but we also have to give them different tools to be able to get them into your school site so they're willing to engage with your book. Now, with that being said, 60% of school sites are hard to differentiate from competition. And that's something that is difficult because without a lot of rich media and a school site have so much depth where rich media is sprinkled across a lot of different channels, it's hard for a prospective student to really understand what's different about you and the competition. What's different about an LSU versus an Arkansas versus a Georgia versus a Tennessee? What's different about an Otterbein versus a Marietta versus a John Carroll? Those are things that students are really looking for, and they're looking, but we also know they have an extremely short attention span when it comes to engagement online. Out-of-the-box solutions don't cut it. One of the things that we heard from Carnegie Dartlet is that rising seniors are complaining that guided online tours all feel the same. And I want to make sure this is not limited to just guided online tours. This is just virtual experiences in general. There's no visual differentiation between schools. It requires high effort, but low value, and it's only the top of the funnel solution. You know, Zoom is Zoom. I even found myself getting lost a lot of times and forgetting who I've talked to because I'm in the same environment every time. And so when we talk about virtual experiences in general, they have to be able to differentiate your brand. And the best way to do that is with your people in an authentic and genuine way. Now, I'm going to take a quick poll break real quick. We got our first poll of the day, which is going to be, I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll now. And it's through which channel do you have the most difficult time differentiating your school? 1 is going to be email. 2 is going to be traditional mail. 3 is going to be social media. 4 is going to be text messages and chat. And 5 is going to be your website. And I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to a minute to complete this. We'll go about 15 more seconds and then I will post the poll. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share the results. The results of this is that email was the #1 way that we were having most trouble differentiating. And that doesn't surprise me much at all. Email is a very difficult tool, especially for a younger generation, but also it's really hard to differentiate through an email as well. We run into the same problem in our industry as well on the other side of the fence, is how do we reach out to you all without it coming off as the same thing as a lot of all of our other competitors are doing. The next was website, followed by text messages and social media that were tied for second, and traditional mail tied was last. Now, with that being said, I think that's something we'll definitely dive into in a little bit more here in a second. But the biggest thing that I would hit on is that we are lucky enough here at StudentBridge that we have one of our leadership team has a rising senior in high school, and he's averaging on Monday through Friday about an email from a college every 9 to 10 minutes. And a lot of the times he's never even heard of these schools. He's shown no interest, and it's not resonating with him. So email is one of those things that instead of asking for information and assuming they're just going to jump into an event, it's all about providing a prospective student with a very soft way of saying, hey, I know you may not know about us, but here's some information about us. And we'll talk about that here a little bit more here in a second as well. I really appreciate everybody jumping in. Now, the next thing is, what can you do differently? Don't skip the courtship. And this leads me from that poll to this discussion here, is provide benefit before asking for something. When I talk about enrollment equals a fit and a feel, fit is something we can look ourselves in the mirror and define, can we fit it in a university? But feel is what takes us to get to that point where we're willing to attend an event. And this is not just because of what we've done in higher education, but it's what's happening in consumer behavior in general. The last time that any of you have gone to, it could be a Bed Bath & Beyond, it could be a Dick's Sporting Goods, we get it to the cash register. And what happens now? Hey, sir, before we get started, can I get your name, email, and phone number? And what goes in the back of my mind is, I know what's about to go down if I get this information up. And students feel the same way. So we've got to do a better job in this market, understanding what students are looking for, providing them that right type of solution, and allowing the prospective student to be able to really dive in and tell us what they're interested in. And when we have them at the highest level of emotional engagement, that's when we can ask them for that information. But just hoping that people are going to come to events, just hoping that people are going to come to informational sessions is not going to work. We have to have the courtship portion of this is that. I'll leave you with this. Why would a student want to show up to your events? Why would a student want to engage with you? We have to give them a reason to do so, because there's so many options out there these days for us to take when we're 18 or when we're 24, or even if we're an adult learner. There's a lot of different outlets we can take for education, or not even to get our education at this time right now as well. Now, what can you do differently? Choose solutions with customization. Make sure that your solutions are branded, and layout needs to be tailored to your audience. Make sure, does it look like everyone else's experience? That is one limitation of a lot of experiences that are out there, is they're built on software as a service platforms, and they all look and feel the exact same way. There's no difference. We talked about Zoom. Every Zoom call looks the exact same. It's someone sitting in their home, working from home. You might see a dog, you might see a kid that runs into the screen, but it's all the same piece that we're in. So it's hard for us to really understand what is different about you versus the other 10 or 15 schools or maybe 100 schools now these days that are reaching out to the prospects with the same exact messaging. Now, one thing that's really important as well is you need to prioritize personalization. And when I mean personalization, is allow the prospective audience to tell us what they're interested in. Guided tours are really difficult these days, because while guided tours work well for me, it didn't work well for Lauren Felter, because she had different interests at different time and different stages in the funnel. So allow students to drive their own experience. That's why I always say, if you can provide an experience that allows a student to drive their experience, but put them on your racetrack, and the only places they can pit stop are places that you know are going to be important to their journey, they will stick around. Because when I'm a prospective student and I watch a video, and that 1 minute, 1.5 minute video ends and I'm engaged, if there's a next clear path to the next piece of content that I am looking for in my journey, it's going to keep me engaged and keep me in the space that you want to. And what I do know is the more we engage with an audience, the more we create personalization and lead that to you all and the admissions team, the better our results are going to be, because the people on campuses are your closers. But we can do a better job of leveraging the way we tell our story, using your students, your alumni, your faculty as that authentic and genuine voice. And we're already seeing that 54% of students prefer sites they can personalize. So really think about that as you put together any kind of virtual experiences, any kind of virtual events, is how do we allow a prospective student to feel like they're in control? Because when we're online, we are in control. It's that cheesy Brad Paisley song that I'm a lot cooler online. In person, I will do anything you want me to do. If you want me to follow you to the chemistry lab, even though I want to be a business major, I will still do it. I want to make sure that I'm polite. But online, I am in control. And that's something to really think about as you build up your experiences going forward into the spring semester. Now, you also want to make it authentic. You want to make sure that we're using students, alumni, and faculty as your voice. And when I say your voice, I would suggest not scripting it. Developing different ways to making sure that your students are speaking from the heart, that your faculty is speaking from the heart. Does this convey your community and culture? The first question that we all probably hear when we got our jobs that we're in right now is, and maybe that's the question that we ask our employer, is what is your culture like? What is your community like? Students want to know what that looks like. How are you going to make sure that that is being evoked by using the voice of your students, your faculty, and your alumni? 1 in 3 students are not interested in school if it's utilizing generic images. I know we've all seen that generic image of you've got the boy, you've got the male, you've got the female, you've got your different races sitting in a quad having a picnic together. That's not authentic. Show content that's going to be authentic about your institution specifically. Show your students, show them interacting together in a way that's going to be genuine. And those are the things that students are looking for these days. As a reminder, the audience that we're recruiting these days are extremely tech savvy. I actually was sitting in a restaurant the other day and I saw a 3-year-old close an app on an iPhone. And I kind of had a moment like, oh boy, what are we getting ourselves into in the next 15, 20 years in higher education as well. So as we move forward, we have to understand that the more tech savvy these prospective students are, the more we have to be genuine and we have to be authentic in our recruitment strategies. Now, the next thing is leveraging human connection as the next step. I know we're all looking for applications. I know if our campuses are open, we're looking to schedule a visit. But don't be afraid to leverage that human connection as a next step. Don't force it by saying, hey, we're just going to invite you to an event and that's all we're going to do. It might be that we need to dive into a couple pieces of content. And now before I even go to maybe your open house, I just want to talk to one-on-one with one of your counselors, maybe talk on one-on-one with one of your student ambassadors. Don't be afraid to have one of your calls to action that is one-on-one Zooms, or integrate a live chat feature where your students get to actually spend some time with your prospective audience. Can they take it slow instead of jumping in is a really good way to put it. I think overall in this recruitment cycle, we're playing it a little bit slow on both ends of the fence. And so, but that's okay. So as long as we start developing that personalization, then our yield's going to be better. So it's going to be important for us to really leverage that human connection as a next step.